You a member of the public or not? Are you gonna speak on public comment or not?
Well, I wanted to talk about MOUs with police departments and
So we'll
regional.
we'll consider you a member of the public, that's fine. This is the agenda, so call to order, we did that. I usually in subcommittees or any meeting before there's a chair, the senior member of the commission always calls the meeting to order. I mean, that's just our standard regulations, I don't know if you folks know that. So if in the room, there's 4 commissioners, and you're the senior person by appointment, you're the one who does it, yeah, it's a city rule. Okay, public comment.
Hi, good
That
morning.
opens from the outside, right?
I believe so.
Okay. That's fine, it's part of the brown hat.
Thank you. I'm here today to learn about what your MOU Compendium? Subcommittee is charged with. And I'm also interested and concerned about our police department and their ability to be able to train and work with other regional agencies and being able to participate in training such as the old Urban Shield, newly reformed or reforming Urban Shield. And I just am a member of the public that wants to voice that I wish that they take this on for the future of whatever Urban Shield is going to be in other trainings. I think that they should have the ability to train with other agencies and work together in case of a disaster or other types of things that they need to train with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody has any questions about the agenda? No?
Yeah.
No? Now who wants to chair this? You're all gonna put it on me. God.
I'll chair things next year, but I need to observe for a year.
My consensus.
You're gonna start
Kathy's
getting so
gonna laugh.
confused with all these different hats you're wearing. But you're doing a good job, so we'll let you keep doing it.
Okay. Oh, so that means that, hey, if you perform well, you'll get punished with more work?
No.
I need to use that with my employees. So this is easy, right? So this is so in front of you, there is the letter that was sent to City Council last year. It's here for you if you need to see it as well. There's an extra copy there for you. And the letter pretty much talks about, this was based on, after the review of all those MOUs, you'll find that some of them are just straightforward, like cooperation with the district attorney for backlogs against rape cases. And what that looks like, the city cooperates with them. There's just basic ones, Alameda, cooperation with Alameda County, with the FEMA, with stuff like that, just basic. I think that the major concern that was last year, for some members of the commission, was the UASI, the participation in NCRIC, and then
I need these acronyms.
Northern Center. It's a Northern Center for Intelligence Gathering. All the centers were created by the passage of the Patriot Act after September 11, in which they tried to consolidate the information from various state and federal law enforcement agencies to prevent, for having communication sharing, which was what the review of September 11th said. There wasn't any communication with the FBI and the CIA, and that led to holes in the information gathering and sharing, which could have resulted in those people being able to do what they did. So the NCRIC centers share the information that is given by local police departments with federal agencies every time that there is a possibility that there is criminal act that could end result in possible terrorist act. I don't think anybody disputes that, or at least from this subcommittee that met last year. I don't think anybody disputes that. I think the concerns were that at one time or the other, the way that those NCRIC reports were presented could have created possible discrimination against members of the Muslim or African American or minority communities, because they were used to identify people that could or could not be involved in a possible criminal act, but the inference was that they were.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the retention of those records, how those records were used. Also, the argument from Berkeley in police departments in the Bay Area are that we are in the Bay Area, and Berkeley particularly is not going to engage in making discriminatory statements in NCRIC reports. But then the other side of the coin is what happens when a NCRIC report is done from a police department like Alameda Sheriff's Department, which we know has a strong bias, or from a police department in other sections of the United States, Alabama with a police department who might not be under the same restrictions, puts a NCRIC report out against an individual, and then that's allocated within the system of NCRIC. And how do our police officers look at that as a valid report without knowing whether it was based on bias or not?
So
that's
we're
a concern.
concerned with when and how this community shares information, but also how they view what's received.
That's right. So the arguments was, so all the NCRIC reports that are sent out are reviewed every year. They're sent to City Council and we see them. They're not very often when they're made. And we have determined that they're on the up and up in Berkeley. But the participation in the whole system is whether you say, Gwen Allenby, this person named Gwen Allenby was seen taking pictures of Lawrence Laboratory. And we think that this person was arrested in 1996 for a misdemeanor something, and that person is under criminal intent, then every single agency is looking at her for just taking a picture of Lawrenceville. So that's the extreme view. That's what they're arguing, right? So how do you prevent that from happening and creating a system in which you take away all that bias, if at all possible, in how those reports are submitted? That's the argument against it.
Not knowing anything about NCRIC, does it deal with domestic terrorism as well, or just? But
that's the point. That's what they say, right? And that's a concern, right? I mean, it's we know that most of the terrorist attacks in the United States are made by white terrorists, which are domestic terrorists, and whether that should be in the forefront instead of assuming that anyone who's Arabic or Muslim religion that's walking on a place that could be considered a soft or hard target, whether that person is there with a criminal intent. That's the point, right? The other side of the equation is people say, well, if we don't participate in this information sharing, we have to participate in information sharing. We have to make sure that the police department in Berkeley are following set standards in which they know how and when not to report, but not to participate would take us away from the ability to have information that we might need for public safety. But then there should be also a review of how do they use that information, what they gather from other places like Alabama, Tennessee, other places that might not have the same kind of progressive values and police department that we do. But we're getting in the weeds on this one here, but this was the ICE agreement. They registered with the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, that's what it's called.
So the ICE agreement is under this NCRIC heading.
That's right. So this is the letter. So they approve all of them. So they approve all of them here, and it said, but we have a problem with
They mean the last PRC.
The last PRC, and to an extent, the last city council, it was split on the vote. Jesse voted in favor, so it created a 5-4. But if Jesse would have voted in favor of the motion on the floor, it would have gone the other way. So it was the participation in Urban Shield in WASI.
Was it just that one vote on Urban Shield that covered all of this?
Yes. And
Okay.
participation on the NCRIC, and ICE, right? The ICE was whether police departments in Berkeley will participate with ICE as they come in to do interviews at the jail system. And because there were other places that were participating in doing it, Alameda County Sheriff's Department, without the existence of a bench warrant, federal bench warrant that requires the department to participate. The end result was the city council, like a lot of jurisdictions in California, said, if you don't have a bench warrant specifically asking for that individual, you are not allowed in jail, we're not gonna cooperate with you. But in addition to that, city council passed a resolution that said that at no moment or the other, unless it's an exigent public safety situation, any resources of the Berkeley Police Department will cooperate with ICE in any operation within the city of Berkeley. Whether breaking a door and arresting 100 people,
So
right?
they did manage to split the Urban Shield vote from that piece of this NCRIC participation.
Because Urban Shield was in the forefront before, participation on the last one, yeah. So those were the three that I think who was here was Littman, Sahana was chairperson and Littman was vice chair at that time. Yeah, I'm Roberts, it doesn't really matter what the vote went, but Roberts, Yampolsky and I were in the minority on this vote. And for the record, my opinion on Urban Shield is out there. It's in written articles and it's in testimony to city council. I mean, I'm in favor of participation with review. Right. So, it's all of them here that are regular. There's new additions to one, and we'll go through the process in which this one will exist this way. And we'll have to talk about them and review them, understanding that whatever we do here is gonna have to go to the full commission, and that's when the real debate will go. Particularly, I'm not familiar, I haven't read it yet, the recommendations by Alameda County Board of Supervisors on what the next steps are for Urban Shield. I know that a co-member of the BART Police Oversight Board, Erin Rhodes, who works for Board Supervisor Miley, is on that task force. And I'm sure she is not in favor of it. So that's the discussion here. Looking at all of them, figuring out which ones are easy, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the new one, of course, we can participate in that. And then go into.
So what's our
the one.
game plan? Are we going to, review the ones that are new? The ones that have already been approved, I don't think we should try to reinvent them.
So that's right. If there's
So
no-
we need to have a plan.
If
So
there-
what's your plan?
But three things is, look at the new ones.
Right.
See if there's anything that we have a problem with.
Right, mhm.
Do a cursory look of all the other ones that have been previously approved to see whether, because if there are no changes to them,
Right.
and we don't see any problem where we should approve them, then move on from those. And then concentrate on the ones that are gonna be a little bit more of a concern, which is, how do we as a group make a recommendation to the full commission on 2, 3, or 4 that might be of concern to the commission and
Okay.
some members of the community. I'm not gonna use a community, because the community in Berkeley
Diverse.
is diverse, it's big.
Not that diverse.
But what I mean is in their opinions, diverse in their opinions, right? Not
Gotcha.
everybody, if the city of Berkeley had, if the 150,000 people that live in Berkeley had really a problem with Berkeley Police Department participating in Urban Shield, we would have 150,000 people at PRC and city council clamoring for it.
Right.
I haven't seen it. So many people use the word
Yeah, me neither.
community,
Mm.
and they use community. I wanna make sure that we're talking about segments of the community
Mhm.
that have concerns and need to be addressed and validated, but it's not the pejorative full community in Berkeley. It just doesn't work for me.
We can call them a concerned community.
Because in my neighborhood, I know a lot of people that live around me, and I don't hear a clamor, right? But they're behind their walls, you know, growing their gardens and living their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a positive. It's a positive. So we agreed that the first step is to look at the new agreements.
Right.
Second might be looking at the,
And can we just say what those are for the record? It's safe, Aries.
yeah, and they're on there.
What is it? They're listed on here.
Right, I know,
Yeah.
but whoever, if anybody, watches this, they don't know what we're talking about. So there's just 3 listed under new agreements: safe, Aries, and NCRIC.
That's right.
Thank you.
And that's good, because the third one, NCRIC, is part of that's a new one based on city council.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll look at the 3 first.
Right.
The 3 new ones. We do, a cursory review of all the other ones that are what's the word I'm looking for?
Non-controversial.
Non-controversial, and then see whether we have to hone our attentions on the, urban shield one, or any other that we decide to say, you know, I wanna have a much broader discussion.
Okay, and once again, the Urban Shield piece is under the NCRIC MOU. No, it's just the Patriot Act stuff.
The NCRIC is participation on the northern center. That's different than participating in WASI funds and urban shields.
So is the Urban Shield piece in here?
It should be somewhere, it should be somewhere on the ones down the list.
Okay, so we have 4 areas of focus: safe, Aries, NCRIC, and Urban Shield.
Yeah, new agreements, regardless of whether they have the NCRIC one or not. We're just gonna look at the new agreements, cause those are.
Right.
A cursory review of other ones, and then pull out of that, those are that we might wanna discuss more in detail, right? Look at the rest of them. And then 3 out of the ones that we identified that we might wanna have a much broader discussion, that's the 3rd one that we'll look into.
Okay. And do we need somebody to look at these ones where there's no change and minimal change, just
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
to
A cursory.
pass eyes over it?
That's right, so I think our job is to look at all of them.
Okay, so
And-
all 3 of us look at all of those, okay.
And then say, you know, and then we'll go one by one. Okay, this agreement, yeah, it looks fine by me, I didn't see any concerns, seems to be the same one last year. Signature this, moving on up. This one from last year, I might have some questions about it. Maybe we need to have, the PRC officer, or, because this is so important, maybe one time or the other, if we have any big level of questions, have somebody from the police department come here and answer them.
Okay.
Okay? So make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
New agreements,
Mhm.
cursory review of all of the ones, and 3rd, pull out the ones that we have concerns of, to include the ones that might be on this last memo, whether they still exist, or there's still any concerns.
And
Right.
this ICE thing, the council pulled out of it, and that's gone until further notice. Or forever. Rescinded, removed,
Well, it is not rescinded, the city approved the ICE MOU, cooperation with ICE, with the proviso that it be modified to reflect the following: BBB shall not provide standby security service for ICE investigations or informers action or otherwise be involved.
but then here it says, ICE, this agreement has been removed per city council direction on September 13th, 2018, which is after this letter,
Oh, then that's fine.
so.
Oh, that's right, this is letters from us to them.
Yeah, this is
So
from
ICE will be
March.
removed, so we might not even have it.
Mhm. I didn't see it in there.
So that's easy. So the Alameda, so let's start, I mean, did you folks have the chance to read the Alameda County Sexual Assault?
I read the
Felony
whole-
report?
I read the whole thing.
I did not.
Oh, you
Neither
did
did I.
not?
No.
Neither did I.
What? I'm gonna leave you two together and go back and get in my bed. I thought that's what we were supposed to do.
I know, but it's,
read
yeah, I didn't like it was
Yeah.
I
today.
didn't get
No, but
it.
this is
I was
easy,
sick.
but this is, it's just right there, it's just easy, it's right there, it's the second page,
Mm-hmm.
it's just easy.
Okay.
It is, it's item number 1.18, and I think this
Yes.
comes from, this is spearheaded by DA O'Malley. This is part of her, what she does.
So we're reviewing this quickly?
Okay, I read it and I had a concern, so when you guys finish reading.
Yeah, this is a political bombshell.
Where are they? Yeah, okay. Question?
Yeah, I don't really see the problem with this. So this was signed last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm ready.
So what were your concerns, Lee? When,
Oh,
sorry.
where was I? Okay. Let me go back. Okay. I had a concern about the other equipment on page 7 at the top. We're already dealing with iPhones and other equipment. This is also now talking about giving them a phone. I mean, all these different phones, I'm just wondering, are they gonna be able to keep this separate from what they're assigned to do?
I think it's not separate. Participating agencies are requested to provide members with a cellular phone. So it's just the phone they're using, their regular BPD phone.
Right.
And the other helpful thing is in this, on page 5, it says, in any situation where there's a conflict between the task force rules and a participating agency, the task force member shall abide by the most restrictive directive, which means that
Right.
our rules about
Right.
phones and uploading
Mhm.
information and all that apply, even when one of our officers is,
Yeah, I said okay to that, but I'm just concerned with the,
I think it's not separate from
Yeah.
the BPD function.
Yeah, cause it says that the agency will supply it, not Alameda County. It's sort of,
okay. I said okay. But I had a concern and I thought I'd mention it.
what about you? Any other?
Well, I noticed that Oakland has something about how complaints should be handled.
Yeah, that's, G,
And-
right?
Right, so
I had
if there's a
question,
complaint
too.
against one of our participating members, then it should follow our regular processes.
It does say that. My only concern is that it says that if there's a complaint against a Berkeley police officer, that they will make a determination whether the concern is valid before it's forwarded to the agency. That's my concern.
Right, so our process is our process.
That's right. So my only concern with the IJ complaints, if there's a complaint against a member of the Berkeley Police Department within the task force, that complaint should be sent directly to, it can be reviewed by them to see if there's validity to it, right? They can add their opinion, but it should be forwarded automatically to the Internal Affairs and to the Berkeley Police Review Commission, and to make a determination, whether it's a complaint or not. So if there's a complaint of sexual harassment against a police officer, God forbid, that an outside agency is making a determination whether that complaint was valid before it's forwarded to Internal Affairs in Berkeley, it's a problem.
Right.
I think that, and I don't know whether they sell that. I mean, it reads that way, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Complaints against safe task force member will be evaluated and if applicable, forwarded to the individual agency for investigation. I mean,
Right.
that's the problem.
That's the opposite of our whole point of the PRC, which is.
Or even Internal Affairs.
Right,
Even, I mean,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
we
not-
don't
Internal Affairs.
self-investigate, well, we do, but that's not the only check.
But if there's a complaint against any member of our police department, I mean,
Mhm.
regardless of whether there's validity to it,
Mhm.
Right.
there's a process both internally to
That
the
we
police
have,
department
right.
and externally that should be followed,
Mhm.
without being, evaluated and if applicable. So if they think, no, that wasn't a sexual harassment in case, or if it was a sexual harassment case, we believe it was, so we're gonna forward it, I mean, for investigation. I mean, it will work if they find it to be valid, but
Mhm.
what if it's a valid complaint and they think, there's nothing Berker. I mean, it just defeats the first of Internal Affairs.
So what are our opportunities to remedy this?
I think that in terms of G, I think our possible recommendation is that, that any complaint with any complaint against safe task force member will evaluate if applicable for, any complaint of any BPD officer participating in the safe task force will be forwarded, to the Internal Affairs Department for evaluation, regardless of the process of the task force. I mean, I'm not even asking for the PRC. I mean, I'm really not asking for the PRC. I mean, I'm asking that it be sent to Internal Affairs before a termination is made, right?
Mhm.
You know?
Tell me about internal affairs, how does it work?
So there's two tracks here in Berkeley, right? If I make a complaint against a police officer with the Police Review Commission, the Police Review Commission is obligated under a Memo of Understanding to inform Internal Affairs, so Internal Affairs conducts an investigation. So there's two-track evaluation, the one Internal Affairs does and the ones that we do. If a complaint comes through Internal Affairs by a member of the community, they have no obligation to share that with the PRC. That's the change that we're looking to have on an ordinance change, much different discussion. But the moment that a member of the public or a member of the police department within the department makes a complaint against an individual police officer, an investigation was started by internal affairs. Is that a violation of procedure? Is that a violation of general order? Was that a violation of use of force or discrimination? That's the basic internal orders. Because general orders still follow treatment of each individual with each other. Or is it, so internal affairs works as an HR department, if you think about it. And investigations of sexual harassment, discrimination within the department and with members of the community. That investigation will follow through, interviews happen, a record is built, and at the end, internal affairs investigators make a determination on both allegations and the findings of those allegations, sustained, unsustained, accelerated, and then those recommendations with discipline or whatever, if it's there, go up to the chief of police, and the chief of police makes a determination on the internal affairs investigation, and then he signs off on them. Yeah, nothing burger, or, oh wow, you guys found that there was discrimination here, let's follow through with that. What's the next step? Is it disciplinary step? Whatever it is. But internal affairs does the same thing that PRC would do internally. Okay. The difference is that the police officer will not come to the PRC and say, Officer X harassed me. Those go directly to the internal affairs because that's an internal thing, right? So my concern here is that there's an outside agency making determinations of whether a complaint against a police officer is valid without the ability of the internal affairs of hearing that. A police chief would say, well, you know, if we don't have to start an investigation, then that's good. They made a determination of the concern was invalid. So at a minimum, there should be some kind of notification to the police department that somebody actually made a complaint against Officer X.
Right.
And whether the department decides to start an investigation or not, pending the end result of the recommendation for the task force investigation, that's fine by me. But no notification to internal affairs or the police department that somebody put a complaint against a police officer and the performance of the duties of the task force,
Breaks the
it's a
system.
problem. It's a problem. It's a problem. Particularly as a broader look, if they find out that there's nothing burger here, I think I'm using nothing burger, I'm using too much of that. But then that person says there is something here, and the task force refused to act on it, and then there's a lawsuit against the city of Berkeley.
Here's a question. So a member of the public who wants to lodge a complaint, would they even be aware of this SAFE task force? Would they think to go to this SAFE task force, or would they come here or to the DPD?
So the question to ask as well is whether the Berkeley Police Department, Oakland Police Department, any police department officer is currently wearing an insignia where they're participating on the task force that says, I'm a Berkeley Police Department, that's Oakland Police Department, that's Hayward Police Department. Whether that explicitly is visible, right? And so if somebody says, he harassed me, or she harassed me, I hate to say he, whether they'll go, oh, you're in the Berkeley Police Department, I can actually put a complaint with the Berkeley Police Department in addition to the task force.
Right.
I don't know that.
Yeah, because who would even know that
Yeah.
they're,
That's right. So that's the other side of the question is whether somebody would think that Oakland Police Department is a Berkeley Police Department officer and then disparage the Berkeley Police Department when it was an Oakland police officer, right? So we have to ask questions whether in this task force, whether are they wearing a Alameda County Task Force jacket that doesn't show that they're Berkeley
it
Police
sounds
Department.
like they're in unmarked vehicles and this is largely incognito, but the badge they would show
That's right.
would be their BPD. So it seems to me a member of the public is going to come here because they're not going to be aware that they're participating in this interagency thing.
But whether they go to Alameda County, and say, as a member of your task force, I don't know if it was Berkeley,
Yeah.
Oakland, or Hayward, did something untoward, and I'd like to put a complaint, and then they review the complaint and go, no.
Right. We don't
I mean,
want
Yeah, should at a minimum somewhere be notification to the internal affairs and to the Berkeley Police Department that a complaint has been lodged against a member of the task force who's a member of the Berkeley Police Department. That is the minimum I think we can add there, and I don't think the chief is gonna go, oh, that's a problem. It's like,
Right.
I would want you to be notified before they make a decision whether the complaint is valid or invalid.
Okay,
Right.
so how about I write a paragraph?
Sure.
And I'll bring it to our next meeting,
Sure.
and then that will be our motion. We make motions here?
Well, yeah,
And we'll bring
put it
it-
by consensus, we don't
Okay.
go through the whole, what other concerns you have?
That was the main one.
And I tell you, I have, the only other concern that I see here is my liberal ACLU member, libertarian kind of person. And, it's this, where is it here? Yeah, I'm fine with the ensure that registers of offenders are in compliance with current laws and parole probation restrictions as applicable. Monitor the activities of known sexual predators through records research and short-term surveillance. I'm a little bit confused about how
Which page are you looking?
I'm on page 3, Article 2 purpose.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, what's your concern?
Should that be under 4, so we know that there's registered sex offenders, the ones that we're doing, the people that are convicted of sexual offenses are the ones that we are monitoring with short-term surveillance? Or,
You mean like reverse it?
but what's,
You monitor the-
how do you determine somebody is a known sexual offender? Shouldn't
Unless
that be,
they're registered.
that's right,
You gotta be registered first to be a known.
Well, not necessarily, because before they're registered, they are observed, right? And
but for you to be registered, you have to be convicted.
exactly, but
Right.
before they're convicted, like short-term surveillance, you might do that on someone who is suspected or has a pattern.
But
and
this is
you
saying
have to-
known, like you know that they are.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Somebody has a pattern, but they haven't been caught, they're not at a level where they could make an arrest, or they're not at a level where there's not enough evidence to make a conviction, and so they are conducting surveillance. That's what they do, right? Otherwise, you've got 2 categories of people who are already convicted and everybody else, and nobody ever switches categories. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think we need to hear from the chief what he means by that. But, cause is there room here for bias?
There isn't all, right, but this is like a detective type activity.
Sure, so.
Where you suspect, you have reason, now to conduct surveillance, do you have to have reasonable suspicion and some sort of process to conduct surveillance? What is it?
No, just to wiretap you do. To go through their mail, you have to have probable cause. Go through their trash, you have to have probable cause. Oh, you fell out of the trash. What was that, right? Right? I think I need a little more clarity on what the known sexual, what's that looks like in some police officers or the task force mind. Okay, I heard that this guy has been hitting on 14-year-old girls out of the school. Okay. Somebody said that this guy is a predator.
The word should be suspected.
Yes. Yeah, suspected or known. Right? Yeah, you're right.
It's suspected, because it's not their job to know, it's the court's job to know, right? It's their job to suspect.
Unless they're saying that they're all registered offenders already, and they're just doing the short surveillance to make sure they're in compliance.
That's not what they're saying.
But that's what it says on 4,
We
right?
need clarity on
It
that
should be
one.
suspected.
So, because there's a difference. There's a difference. If you're a known sex offender and you're not supposed to be on the internet on a particular site, or you're not supposed to be 100 feet from a school, or you don't have to, you're not supposed to be babysitting kids, or whatever it is. I hate to, this makes me uncomfortable, the whole topic. It needs to be done. I can't fathom this behavior, but I know it exists. Whether that's the same thing as ensure that registered sex offenders are in compliance with current laws on parole, probation restrictions as applicable. That's different than saying, I think the community says that that's a known sexual offender, so we're gonna surveil these people. Well, isn't that the 14th Amendment saying you have the right of privacy?
Known,
I mean, it's
it
like,
might not even be true.
That's the thing about policing. They need to know, they have other rules other than us, right? So we're not actually, the 14th Amendment, they're governed by that, whether we make them governed by that or not, right?
that's right. So I mean, I just need to know what the known means. Does the known means because they're registered offenders and they should be on the same level, or did they make a point of separating both of them to make sure that they could investigate someone, you're right, that they think
To do their job,
is a suspected one?
yeah,
So why use the word known instead of suspect?
right.
You know, but that's the question. I mean, known by who? Because they're already been convicted? Well, that's your register thing.
Mhm.
Right.
Why is it separate? Why is the intent to separate it? I think I have that question. And I think the chief will be able to say, you know, George, is this because of this and this and this? And then we go, okay, we get it.
So what's the action on that one? You're going to ask the chief?
We have to, we, if everybody's in agreement on just getting clarification from the chief, we forward to the chief or to any officer that he wants to say to us, what's the difference between a known sexual predator, line 3, that process, and the process 4, which is to, sex offenders.
So this is gonna happen in writing
Yes.
from
And
us?
from the PRC, the officer. So we'll give a list of her this question, and she forwards it to the chief. That's easy. All communications should happen directly through the PRC officer.
Okay,
That way there's a record of it, and there's no, well, the chief told me this, well, no, he didn't,
okay.
right?
So thank you.
So that's number 3. Apart from that, you know, you're gonna come up with language
Yes,
on the complaints. And we're just asking the chief to give us a little more clarity on Article 2 between 3 and 4.
and this was signed,
I had a question about the signature block, because, I noticed that Oakland wasn't signed. Does that mean they're not participating, or?
No.
That means that at the time that this was put into place the first time,
That was at the end of the year, and, we're now in March, so.
so the question is well, that's another question to ask. How
Yeah,
come
I'd be
Chief
curious
Chief
as to
Patrick
why.
decided not to?
Yeah, did they back out, or what's going on?
I think it probably just wasn't signed when this was photocopied.
Yeah, we can ask that question, is OPD participating? I mean,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I put a question mark, cause I thought that was rather odd.
Yeah, we can,
So I noticed this, he signed this 6 months ago, so, and it's a 1-year agreement, so.
so it's up now.
Pardon?
It's up, but every year, regardless of, every year on the fiscal year, they have to be reviewed,
Right,
so.
so we're asking him to incorporate things from next year, if we get to that step.
That's right,
what we're
before we
doing.
recommend to city council. Remember, all these recommendations go to city council. We'll say to city council, if we find it that way, that there needs to be an explanation on the complaint process. And, but the questions to him is, talk to us about the difference between 3 and 4, and why is OPD participating now,
Yeah.
right? The recommendation from us, but we'll tell the chief about it, of course, because he'll see this, is that we think that the complaint process should be a little more explicit and why. And he says, you know, that's right, or, you know, that needs to go to Nancy O'Malley for review. Then we say, that's fine, but we're gonna tell city council that city council needs to review this and think whether they think it's important, or say, you're making too much out of it, I think we're fine,
Mhm.
right? Because when we're all just advisory, city
Okay.
council ultimately has to say, okay.
So why don't I write the draft email that will go from the PRC
PRC officer to the chief?
She can do that.
Because she has to do it, I mean.
Yeah, she has to do that.
Because if you're thinking about the language that goes
Okay,
to the
I'll
chief.
write the draft email to the PRC officer that says, here are our 3 concerns.
But we will have more.
Well, on this one thing.
On this one, see, but on the task force, the language on G is something you're gonna bring back to us, right?
Yep.
And then we have to vote on it, right?
Yep,
And then if we vote on it, it's a recommendation to the full PRC to review.
okay.
That goes to the PRC, and the PRC decides, you have the lawyers there, Ramsey might go like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Even 3 or 4, Ramsey will go, right? It is important because Yampolsky particularly, his caseload is based on representing women and minorities against cases of corporate discrimination. So that's his law expertise. Ramsey used to be a federal prosecutor who's now a white-collar crime lawyer. From prosecutor to coin defender. That's kidding, Ramsey. So language on complaints. Number 2 is explanation on, and once we finish this, if we can send an email, you can send we can agree, we send an email to Kathy to forward our questions on our review. And then she'll send those questions to the chief can answer them, and then we can move from there. Explanation on, but you're right, we might be asking his answer on the complaint issue as well, you're right. And if he says, we didn't find it necessary, or, I didn't read that, then we're fine. If we still find that we don't like his interpretation, then we put a vote and move it forward or not. Explanation on 3 vis-a-vis 4, just for my own notes, on purpose. And 3, OPD participation. Okay,
Okay,
moving on.
next.
What's the other new one? Oh, she put it in order, didn't she? Aries.
Mhm.
Once again, Gwen is ahead of us.
This is also short, 5 minutes.
Then I have a question, once you guys finish reading.
What we're supposed to do?
Oh, I don't know what you guys are
That's
doing,
what I'm
I already
saying.
read mine, that's what I'm saying, I stayed up all.
Okay, teacher.
I'm sorry, it's just,
You are a
I
teacher.
like to
Aren't
be
you a teacher?
prepared. No, I was in higher education, but I like to be prepared when I come somewhere, so I stayed up
Oh.
sick.
Next time I'll
Doing
keep up
this.
with you.
No, you don't have to keep up with me, it's just, I just thought that's what we
Sorry,
were
Mom.
doing.
I was working until midnight. Oh.
What page?
We're on page 9.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we're reading the whole document, yeah, starting there.
This is pretty good.
Including a disclaimer that information might or might not be true?
Yes, but it says it's the responsibility of the entity requesting it to determine that, so it's putting it all back to local and
Before
saying
any
that
law enforcement
And
action is taken, yeah.
you don't lose control of the information if there's an entity that is not party to this MOU. The local agency that posted that has the right to share or not share that information, so it's very respectful of local control.
I like their hell animation cost alignments. If we don't participate, we'll influence public safety and employee safety. Well, what else would they put there?
I think that looks good. Any concerns?
Well, I just had one. Okay, under summary, it says BPD has access and they do not contribute information to the database.
That's right. It's Contra Costa, it's not Alameda County.
Right, I know, but when we move to page 10, it says 10.1.3, each agency will submit data. So are they expecting BPD to do this even though BPD has indicated they do not contribute information?
You're looking at section 10? Or page 10?
1.3, page 10.
Okay.
See, it's kind of,
Is there a contradiction?
yeah, and I think it should be a little clearer. I mean, all agencies except BPD or something, because it sounds like they expect all agencies that's participating, but yet when we look under summary, it's saying something totally different.
Although it does say each agency participating in the database does so under its own individual legal status.
Yeah, that means whatever rules.
Yeah. Okay. Is
Yeah,
there-
that's a question for the chief.
Yeah.
Well, you know, obligatory multi-participation, all the disclaimer on presentation page says otherwise.
Right, and then another concern I had was under signature. I wanted to know if this has been recently signed by the news chief, because this is signed under me now. So has he signed this since? Then that's what we need to know.
Is the chief here a year so far already?
Yeah.
This is it, yeah, this is interesting.
So that's why I put a note by to have that clarified, because otherwise this wouldn't even be valid, because he's not our chief anymore.
No, it is valid until the only way you can get off it if you give notice to
30
them.
days,
Yeah.
right.
180.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's still operational, doesn't have to be signed by the chief now. I mean, the sharing of the records of the PRC is, the memo of understanding that police officer will participate in police review commission, interviews and hearings. It's a 1992, memo by the then chief of police. It has not been signed or rewritten by any chief of police since then. It's still in operational to rescind it, like, executive order by Obama, right? It needs to be rescinded before it's
Yeah.
no longer operational. So, I mean, so I think
I
it's,
think it should be updated though.
yeah, which is, why signature by new chief.
So 2 questions on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Nick, Rick?
Moving right along,
Oh, the easy one.
Yeah.
and this is a new one.
This is, this is,
23.
Yeah, we're on
19.
page
19.
19.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It says in 2019, the BPD entered into a more formalized agreement, so it's already executed.
yeah.
Let me turn this off, sorry.
Oh, I like it. At least it wakes you up, gets you going.
Okay.
Is General Order 17 in here?
No.
I had a problem with 7 on page 24 when you get to that point.
Who is Nick Rick?
The federal government is under the NSA and the Homeland Security.
Okay,
It's under Homeland Security.
so this is a department.
This is a local law enforcement agency, in agreement with the federal government. Huh. Oh, I think I need something different there. Data sharing.
so let's hear from you first.
No. You have, no, we'll go on the table. I mean, what did you have?
Well, I had a concern on page 24, item 7, about this automated license plate reader.
Yeah.
I just think that's a little too much. I just think it should be removed, and I didn't know what others feel like.
I told you what the chief was saying. She was saying that the license plate reader allowed him to capture in 2 different occasions criminals. And he said that at the PRC before.
Well, he did.
That is the usage of it is what allowed them to capture those people.
This is just receiving data. So I guess if they enter a license plate that they're looking for, they might receive data of where that car was seen.
That's right, whether in the camera, the NSA camera, this the conspiracy theorist, right?
Mhm.
In the NSA camera surveillance, whether it's well, plate readers itself just captures the license
Mhm.
plate and then compares it to a database of suspected or known license plates that people are searching. The major argument will be Amber Alert, right? 73LR62H, California plates.
Mm-hmm.
And BART particularly uses plate readers in and out of every single BART parking station. So whether that, and that was a problem, right? For the BART police force I worked for a while.
Mhm.
So that reads that plate's triggered somewhere in the database. This is a plate they've been looking for, and that triggers the action to know that's where that person who might have abducted that person is. And whether that creates action that can be delivered on for public safety. That's the argument.
Mm-hmm. I don't agree with that.
The other argument is whether there is a violation of privacy
I
to
think
be
it is.
taking a license plate reader every time you go.
Mhm.
But you know, every time you go through the
Piedmont.
pay gates,
Or if you go through Piedmont, they do that.
every time you go through the pay gates of the bridge, it's a plate reader, and that's a natural
I don't go
federal.
over the bridge, I go under.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
Oh, you
know.
take part.
You know,
I
know
mean,
what
but
you're
I mean,
saying, yeah.
if you're driving in Mission Street by the federal building, there
Mhm.
are 20 plate
I just
readers
think
on
it's an
Mission and
invasion
Eighth.
of privacy, and I don't know what the other commissioners will think, but anyway.
I think they're not getting reports on every license plate that passes through. They're saying, we're looking for this car, and then if there's,
I can't interpret what they're saying. I'm just reading this, so I don't know.
Well, they're saying, but I think what they're saying, what people would say is that the participation in the program promotes the program. And by promoting the program, you promote a system which some people might consider to be a violation of privacy standards. The courts are mute on this. There is no case now that has been gone through the court to determine whether it is valid, because there's so many plate readers everywhere, right? I mean, if you have a problem with your privacy, you shouldn't be in New York or Times Square. Don't ever go to New York or Times Square, because there's 100 cameras pinpointing your face, and they have facial recognition and everything else. So, I mean, it's just whether you driving your car, you have a sense of privacy, and whether the sense of privacy that you think you have is superseded by the need for public safety and using a process that might identify the criminal that you're looking for.
the
That's-
purpose of a license plate is identification.
That's right. If you're not up to no good, then, you know, why do you have a problem with it, right? It's whether you think that people should be tracking everywhere you go, you know, whether you should have a right to privacy in your everyday movement within the United States. That's what that's the meat here. Whether, you know, there are plate readers everywhere, and then you're like, well, at 3:33, she was over at the donut shop getting a donut at 3:45. You know,
So-
that's a paranoia aspect.
So,
Yeah.
point out, this information is being collected no matter what. The only thing this says is if the BPD is trying to find a stolen car or a suspect, and there is
That's not what
information on
it's
that
saying.
database, then it comes in.
That's not what it's saying, so we need to
What page was that
flag
one?
that.
It was, now, page
24.
24, 7.
Okay.
We can flag it and have the commissioners voice their opinion. That's just my opinion, so we're all entitled to an opinion.
Mm. Well, you know, Wallaby, you can also, on this number 7, you can, we can tie it with what I'm requesting them to do for number 1, which, actually it's not number 1, it's data sharing. Where's data sharing on there? I lost it. APR information. You know, where's data sharing? I mean, there is something on the data sharing that says that the data sharing that Berkeley, where is it? Compass. There we go. You know, it grants, what is it, regulatory requirements?
Then I had another question, when you get a chance. On 5.
So the Berkeley Police Department grants authority to NCRIC to further share information contributed by Berkeley Police Department with other public safety, entities to possess and need to know, right to know the share data, except where included denied by the Berkeley Police Department. I think that the same thing with the plate reader, we can say that as part of their SARS report, they can inform to Berkeley every time that they share data with NCRIC from the Berkeley database, and every time that they use the plate reader for an investigation. That's part of a report that goes to council, the PRC. You know, in 2017, we used the plate reader 15 times. Out of the 15 times, 12 resulted on an investigation that led to an arrest. In 2019, we shared information from the Berkeley database. We allowed them to share that information with other agencies through NCRIC. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to have a process of reporting. I just don't think we're gonna get, they're gonna use a plate reader. Are we gonna say to the Berkeley Police Department, report on it? How many times you used the plate reader in 2019 as part of a report, right?
I don't even think they're the ones using it. They're just receiving data. They're looking for a car and they can.
Yeah, but they said that they used it on an investigation and the information, so every time that they use a plate reader in an investigation, whether that's something that they should report. In 2019, we used a plate reader information
No,
to
they're not using
investigation.
the plate reader, they're using the data from
That's
somebody
right.
else's plate
Well,
reader.
that's right, so because we have concerns about whether they should use that information. Is the balance to saying to the police officer they can and cannot use the information is report on it. Report your usage, right? Is that the compromise? Some people might not like the fact that you're part of a system that takes information from people that they're driving around, right? But if you're gonna use it for an investigation, can you report on it? Can you say?
I just think of that white van outside the school that was
Oh, sure.
trying to abduct teenage girls. And if
there were a license plate on that car, we would absolutely want to know where that car was. If somebody could say, hey, that car just left, you know, the North Berkeley BART station. I don't even know if there's a reader at the North Berkeley BART, you would just, all BART stations.
They have a parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, in the
There's no
interest
cameras
of
in the
public
parking lot.
safety, we would want to know. I don't think they're collecting data on society, they're just saying, if we're looking for a vehicle, a suspect, car or vehicle,
Yeah, but it
in
says,
what way would we serve the community to not have that information?
oh no, I agree with you, I think that that unfortunately, the value of the usage might outweigh a lot of the concerns. I would like to, as an oversight body, and as an accountability and transparency body, to say, okay, report on it. Report how many times you actually used it in an investigation, because it says here, if the data is used in an investigation, the data will remain with the case until the case is purged according to BPD retention guidelines. Okay, so how many times in 2019 do you use the information from NCRIC on a plate reader for an investigation? We used it 185 times. Okay, that's on our report. Next, a report on it. Report when you used it, so that there's, see, the whole thing with accountability is not to create a bump, a speed bump in the process, is to make people think when they're using the process. That's the whole thing about oversight, is to say to someone, before you take that action, are you really thinking of the repercussions, consequences, and taking into consideration the ifs and whatnots, so that when you use the process, you're doing due diligence. That's all that oversight is. It's just saying to someone, sometimes it is, you shall not do that. Sometimes it is, if you are gonna do it, are you going to have accountability about it? And I would be the one who would recommend, report on it. How many times you use the reader in the exercise of a criminal case? I don't need to know what the criminal case was. I don't need to know what the end result of the case was. Just report on it.
But then what?
Just because you're saying to them, we're using this system, and we're using this system for a purpose. And the purpose have actually served the purpose for the Berkeley Police Department. We're getting into the NCRIC system, using the plate readers, and we have used it every single time in the following or the investigation of a crime concern. And that's the only reason why we used it for. It's just accountability. It's transparency, not accountability. You know, it's transparency, yeah.
For just, do you have a specific concern about it rather than a vague concern?
It's not vague.
What's the specific?
Specific is, it's an invasion of privacy, and the community needs to know this. That's why we are the oversight. If it's something that's flashing high beams, I think that we should flag it. And I found that to be flashing high beams.
So we don't have plate readers anywhere. This is just about us getting to using a system that has it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The old joke, in the corner of University Avenue, and I forget what it is, before you get to Spankers, right?
Right.
That there used to be a camera that said,
Right.
watch the cameras go. That camera don't work.
No.
Don't tell nobody.
Yeah.
It don't work. It's dead.
Right.
But that
You
captures.
just told everybody.
It doesn't work. The chief has said that on the record. But if that camera was working,
Right.
it is capturing, if you fail to go through that red light to the green light on the red, right? It captures the license plate, back and forth, right? So that's, something like that already exists in Berkeley, but we don't have anything like that. Is whether somebody says, you see, I just think that there's a useful person. If somebody says, somebody was a hit and run, and that person was hit and run, God forbid, ex-commissioner of the police commissioner, I'm not gonna mention her name. And we thought the license plates were this. And you go into the NCRIC and say, there's pictures of that within the database of when that person was last.
Mm-hmm.
That's their purpose. I think he does, under a specific end result of an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
So if our concerns is over privacy and possible abuse of the system,
Mm-hmm.
then let's have a report on it.
Yeah.
How many times did you use it in a year?
I would agree with that if they were
actually generating data, but they're not, and we should ask.
Yeah.
Are they just putting in a license plate number and saying, has this car been spotted? Because they're on an investigation for a specific reason. As
So what's the
opposed
reason
to-
for reporting? Let's say that I am, this will never happen, not my belief, that any police officer in Berkeley would behave this way. Not my belief.
Where's my girlfriend?
Where's my girlfriend? Where's that guy who I don't like? Who is that guy who I think is an African American or Latino or a Muslim or an Asian American who's in a gang who I don't like, who I think is a problem? Let me put the license plate. Oh, I know where you is at. Is that an invasion of privacy? That's the concern. So in order for us to say there's not a concern,
Okay, I
Report on it.
converted, thank you.
report on it.
Yes,
You know?
thank you.
You know,
Discuss.
is there a method in which this could be reported on? The same thing as every time that the Berkeley Police Department shares information with NCRIC out their own data, should that not be reported to council? In 2019, we have 15 instances in which we shared information with NCRIC, and we allow that information to be shared with other agencies.
I think it
Right?
should be reported.
Just report it. We don't have to have the specifics of 11/26/2019 case number. Now,
Right, we don't need that, we just need to know.
the SARS reports on every single entry, confidential, right, for closed session for city council. But also have a mode of reporting to city council on the PRC that says, we use plate readers 150 times 2019, we share information with NCRIC, part of the database we share with other ones, 326 times. It's transparency.
Okay.
They can use the system, just say to the community, this is how we're using it and when we're using it, period. And I think, the whole thing also with oversight, is the fact that if you answer questions on the front, what happens when you answer questions on the front? You don't allow anyone else to dictate a narrative.
Mhm.
And that's my conversation with the chief about BART. I get all these reports every single month on use of force, internal affairs investigations, everything. It's in the public. You can actually access it on the internet. Not the case number and the decision on the case number, not the police officer, know when it happened. And guess what? There's no one at BART going, what happened with transparency? How come you guys are talking about use of force? How come you're not reporting it? No one does that, because guess what? You can access it on the internet, because they put it out.
Okay.
So
I get
it
it.
doesn't become the narrative.
Right.
Right now, in Berkeley, the narrative is negative, because they feel something's going on, because they're not sharing. Share it all.
Mhm.
And let people deal with it, you want to deal with it, but they can say you're not sharing. That's always my thing.
Mhm.
Oversharing,
Mhm.
privacy issues, yes. Sharing is good. So I think we need to, my other concern was under 9, unauthorized user access. What's a training bulletin? What would a training bulletin look like from NCRIC?
Right.
Right? I understand that reports look like.
Mhm.
What's a training bulletin look like? I don't know what a training bulletin looks like. What does that look like at all?
Is there a way we could pull one up if we went to their website?
No, you cannot go to the
Let me
website.
see,
That-
what is it? Oh.
You have to have a user ID to go to the NCRIC website. You can go to the NCRIC website as a general person because it's a federal agency, right?
Mhm.
But into database, no. But actually, you can tell what that looks like. On 11, on storage, it says,
But why are you concerned about?
I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what a training, because we're not doing training bulletins anymore in the department, in the Berkeley Police Department. We do general orders. We went away from training bulletins. Before, every time we did a training bulletin, that was a training bulletin that it said how to do something. We completely went away from that, and we say, no, a general order dictates the way the police department operates. They're not superseded or changed by a training bulletin at all. If you wanna have something that is part of the way the police department should operate, that needs to be in a general order. And I think there's safety on that for the police officer. That's my rules, that's how you have to judge me. You cannot judge me on a training bulletin that I didn't fail to read, period.
But maybe we can get a copy of this from the chief, because they have access.
The question is whether, NCRIC will allow a training bulletin to be out in the public. We have heard that NCRIC doesn't want to share anything with the public at all.
No, but the chief can get a copy of this, and if,
But he doesn't have-
if
but-
he decides,
No, he cannot share it unless NCRIC tells him he can
unless,
share it.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
But my question is basic. What does that look like? What is the training
Yeah.
bulletin about?
Mm-hmm.
Is it about how to conduct criminal investigations? Is it
Mhm.
about how to conduct surveillance? Is it about how to use the system? What does the training bulletin look like?
Yeah,
I mean, is it is
But
on
you're not
weapon
saying
management?
you don't, I mean, it's not a problem for the chief to read what's coming out of NCRIC. The problem would be to use training bulletins instead of our local general order.
That's right. And
So
so
you're
what do
not
you?
saying don't receive it,
No, no,
cause that's what this says.
but I don't know what they are. I don't know what the training bulletins are on. What are specific things what specific training bulletins does NCRIC generate that the Berkeley Police Department would have an interest in outside of their own training?
Why do we care? Because,
Because they could influence how training is in the police department in Berkeley.
but shouldn't, okay, so we want general orders control how the BPD operates. You're not saying, don't look at, that your training will be corrupted if you view that. That's like a,
I don't know. We live in the land of the Republicans in government on Trump. We live in the land of the NSA being ruled by an appointee of President Trump.
right,
I
which
don't
is
know.
horrifying, but
We don't know what their training bulletins look like.
wouldn't you wanna know? Let's say there's a training bulletin, wouldn't you wanna know what other communities are being told, even if your position
Sure.
is to resist and do something different?
But I wanna know what they are. I wanna know what they look like. What is the training bulletin off? If he tells me, it usually is just about how to file things alphabetically, in contrary to the alphabetical system that the Library of Congress uses. Oh, okay, that makes sense. But I don't know what a training bulletin would be about, what it would look like, and what it would be related to coming from NCRIC. I should know that.
Some of it is gonna be neutral, and some of it's gonna be
But
frightening, and some of it's gonna be,
that's right. So,
and,
and then the question to him is, when you guys get these training bulletins, what do you do with them, chief? Do you act on them? Do you review them? Do you see validity information on them? This is part of a conversation. And he says, something, George, sometimes they're innocuous, sometimes they're very, very specific. If we think there's a valuation of the general order in terms of what they're saying to say that we should conduct an investigation, we put them in the shredder and go away.
okay.
Then that's on the record, that's
So all I'm
transparency.
saying is that this doesn't say anything about what they do with them. It just says they can receive them.
That's right. So our oversight work is to say, okay, when you receive them, what do you do?
Mhm.
That's part of the oversight.
Well, you already told me what they do. They don't use training bulletins. They rely on general orders.
Internal. No more training bulletins will be issued as a means of directing police department. General order will be issued. That's internal. That has nothing to do, that's an internal operation of the Berkeley Police Department. That has nothing to do with how did it look like at an external training bulletin. And so those training bulletins, what they're about, are they used, are they not used, right?
So you wanna confirm that they used.
I wanna confirm what they look like.
I know, but why, George? So-
Because that, I understand what you're saying, because I mean, there's curiosity as well, right? We're participating in a system, that is federal, so what does that look like? How does it come in? What kind of information are they disseminating out to you? I mean, regardless of how you evaluate it or use it or not, so there's curiosity as well. As what does it look like? What kind of training bulletin is the federal government giving out, right? To local police departments and how they're getting evaluated. And also, I mean, do you find value on them, chief? Are there any of them that you find value on? I mean, for investigations or for lineup conversations, right? Roll call conversations. Do you find value in that? I mean, do you not issue it, but do you post it for general information, or do you completely dismiss them? We don't know that. He says, George, we don't even use them. I mean, I might read them, I might find some information that is valid there. If it is,
Okay, so this is
incorporate it.
not a question so much about this word here, because all this says is they would receive it. The question is
Why
not,
do-
is what do you do with it?
that's it. And what did it look like? What are the subjects that are usually you have seen? And do we do anything with them or not? Sure. All those 3 questions in there. If I don't ask the question, we know a couple of commissioners will. So do we get ahead of that question? Do we get ahead of the question we're gonna ask, what happened with those, are they using the training bullet, how they're gonna use it? And we can say, we asked the chief. The chief says that they're not used in a regular training. Either something of importance has to do with an investigation or something like that. But it's not an investigation, it's a training bulletin. Training by definition means instruction. So if there's an instruction through a training bulletin through a federal NCRIC agency, what subjects are regularly under those training bulletins, and are you choosing to use them or not?
I would like to confirm that the BPD is not abdicating its authority to the federal government. I would like to confirm that. But I just wanna say, I would never say, oh, don't receive information.
Oh, no.
Because what the federal, and that's all this says.
It's all in there.
Is that NCRIC puts stuff out and the chief is gonna be aware of what they're putting out. Local response to that is completely separate, but I would never say, don't have information, don't even look, or don't even know what the federal government is up to.
Oh, no, it's just, the conversation is our questions are like, what are the subjects that they usually send information on training bulletins? I mean, just for our own irritation. And the other one is, do you do anything with them? Yes or no?
Mhm.
Yes, I do. Then we need to talk about what that looks like.
That's different, but
You
this
see.
MOU only says he gets the information.
Yes, but part of the work is to say, okay, when you get that information, do you use it or not?
That is a valid question.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
that's
saying,
a
we're
question.
not challenging
No,
this
I'm not, no,
MOU.
he can receive all the information, but if he's gonna use it, let's talk about what that looks like and what did it look like, right? Is this, cause we might find, people might not believe this on some side of the aisle, but we might find that, yeah, that's a good training bulletin to have. But is there a process of evaluation? If the process of evaluation exists, what that looked like?
It sounds to me from what you said, that if there were some idea that was worth incorporating into local practices, that it would require a general order.
But is that training bulletin, even though it's not issued as a directive for training, use the lineups? So we received this training bulletin from NCRIC and it said A, B, C, and D. So as you're going out there today, let's keep in mind A, B, and C. Is that a non-written, non-posted, not directed training bulletin, but the information on that training bulletin is used in how the police officer conduct their business, in addition to the general order? Because you might find that might not be fully conflicted, because the general order might be silent on it. So if we're using those training bulletins in any way, what does that look like? What does that look like? Sometimes just a simple answer to the question invalidates a concern. That's always been my practice. It's easier for me to go, set it and forget it, and go like, it is the why, not knowing the answer, whether you think the answer is applicable to what we do or not, that stops the problem from getting bigger. Particularly if you're a conspiracy theorist, everything is a problem, which I'm not. I rather live completely oblivious to the world. I do not.
Happy medium.
Happy medium. So that was my only concern.
Okay, so we have two. One is the concern about plate read data.
And
the other
data sharing.
is what happens when a bullet is received.
But the other one was a permission by BPD for data sharing. Are we informed? So there's two concerns in informing council. Are we informing council every time? Should we have a reporting process every time that a plate reader is used for an investigation? That should be part of a report. And every time that the BPD grants permission to NCRIC to share information that they put on the database.
Yeah.
You convinced me that there should be some reporting.
That's right, and then those are,
But
so
I
the-
just wanna say, I'm not sure that when we say, oh, just report, that it's that easy. I don't think it's that easy at all. I have a feeling that that's not easy. Cause you're doing 50 things in a day that may have a little tag for reporting.
remember, there's only PLO officers, there are only 2 or 3 officers in the department that are allowed to engage in that NCRIC.
So maybe it's
So-
more doable than I might.
Yeah, so,
Okay,
I mean,
George,
it's,
I have a
you put it in a little book, you put 3 lines on it, you put a name, you put a log, you put the user, you put a signature. I do, and I give a check to everybody, you know, I dated, amount, sign.
And, right.
It's a
but-
log, it's a log entry, but they have an entry there. So is there any way for it to catalog how many times they used it? I'm sure they could, I mean.
Maybe that system could spit out a report.
Oh, Lord. I don't think you can print, I'm not sure, I think I have this idea of the federal government it's so tactically careful with everything that they share, how it's shared. What was,
15.
we need 15 more minutes and we out. What was your question?
Okay, well, I wanna refer back to page 23,
23.
item 5. And, under the Berkeley surveillance ordinance that we worked on, it's supposed to be, an annual reporting, and NCRIC, if we use NCRIC's equipment.
Equipment, yeah.
And it looks like in here, it states that BPD may request equipment and analytical support. So how do we know when they're requesting this? Should we be notified when they're requesting this?
But
The
it
use
goes to
of-
city council on the annual surveillance report.
Right. So that's the only way we'll know?
That's right.
When it- Okay,
So we put that, we put the city council with the peers of recommendation, put into
Mhm.
place that annual reporting.
okay.
It's all, if, this is the whole thing with this, if there's vibrant dislike of the usage of this system by members of the community, some members of the community, then isn't the reporting, a way to assuage those concerns?
Right.
Sure.
Mhm.
Sure. There's reporting on that. Oh, the SARS reports are horrible. Well, there's a report on that, so we can get a look at them and they're okay. Nothing further. They're using it directly readers to violate my privacy rights. Well, there's a report on that,
Mhm.
and we know how they're using it for investigation, so nothing burger, right? Oh, they're sharing information with NCRIC, they're talking about me. Well, there's a report on that, they used it 7 times, and they took the permission away 5 times, nothing burger. That's the whole point. If I could get that through some police departments, I think they would go, okay, I get it. As long as we don't use it to a gotcha and a smoking gun process, which is the other side of the equation. People will always look for the negative part of the information and use it against something. And that's what creates non-transparency.
Mhm.
Because there's a fear that transparency leads to accusations that are unvalidated. And I recognize that. So those are our questions for tonight. Lord have mercy. We even haven't gone through the other 323. But we will read all of them, Allenby, and come back with any
Okay, yeah, I've
concerns.
already read them, so.
Oh, sweet Jesus. So but that means that, was there an OASI one here?
No, there's not one in here.
There isn't one in
I
there.
didn't see it.
For Urban Shield?
I thought
So
we
maybe
did-
that's a question
Wait
to
a
also
minute,
have.
wait a minute, let me think, I read so many.
Do we have,
I
well,
did read something about Urban Shield, let's see. We have BART in here,
yeah, no, they have to.
I read that, I read the whole thing.
So, I don't know, so maybe we can add to the question to the chief, do we have, an Urban Shield one? Shield / OASI, right? There is?
I'm just saying yay.
I don't know if there's one, this is the worst misleader you need. She goes, yes, I'm paying for anything. Yeah, thanks for misleading. Let me see, Control F, right? No, Alt F. Is it Alt F? Jesus. What is the one that tells you where everything is in? Shift F. What's the finding? What do you do for finding?
Is this a Mac?
No, it's not a Mac.
Can I help you?
No, I only use Mac. This is my husband's. Control find. Where is it? Alt. Find. What is this that you use to get to find a word in the document? I should know. Do you know what I'm saying? Oh, Jesus Christ! This is so advanced that you no longer have to do that. This is so advanced that this is one of those computers that gamers use.
Did you get it?
No results.
I didn't see one when I read this, so. And see, our first page will
There isn't.
tell you, yeah, it's on the first page, it tells you what we have in this.
So we have to ask Luasi. So we're good with the three big ones, and then we can
Yes.
review all the other ones internally and come back with
Mhm.
concerns?
Okay, sounds good to me.
Is it time to adjourn, or do we have
It's
to?
time.
It's time
You
to.
have a question, or?
No, I was just gonna go over one more, but that's okay.
We
We'll
can
get
do
it next
here.
time.
It's just one page, it looks like
Yeah,
it's
it's
one
one page
page.
and
Which one is it?
The domestic violence issue,
Page number?
2829.
Thank you.
This is very,
I didn't have a
general.
problem with
No.
any of that,
No.
so I said, okay.
Yeah, me too.
I don't have a problem with that one.
No
I had a
questions.
problem with page 30, but you know how I am.
Thorough.
Can we
that's how
do
you are.
that? I just thought the money was kinda too much. On page 30, under, cost,
$5,000?
annually.
Yep.
And, uh, is this going, I mean, I'm trying to understand,
Yeah,
what is this going to?
it's for women that are, for legal and medical services to defray the cost.
Oh, but that's not what it's saying.
Yeah, CALICO is a
It's
private
saying,
organization that provides legal, medical.
listening, interviewing, and coordination.
Well, CALICO is a private organization that provides legal, medical, and therapeutic services to children and
Mhm,
elderly
mhm.
adults in Alameda County who are victims or witness of abuse and neglect. It's a nonprofit organization, so we pay into the fund as a police department, into this nonprofit, organization.
Okay.
To help people.
So is there other, okay, I see. And I just wanna know if we're all paying the same amount?
Yeah,
I'm
every
just
single city,
pays the same amount.
pays the same amount. It's a shared responsibility for participation.
Yeah, I agree with participating, but comes to funds, I'd like to know if we're all
Yeah, everybody
giving
gives
the
the same amount
same
of money.
amount.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds like a plan.
That makes like $1 million, you know? No, if 100 times 20 is not $1 million.
Yeah, really.
Okay, the next one's long, so this is probably a
Okay,
place to
so
stop.
which?
Okay, the next one would be the, Sheriff Association, Alameda County. So we'll
Right.
start on page 33, the next meeting
Yep,
So the last one we did was
was,
Calico.
Calico.
So we did approve domestic violence and CALICO,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Yeah, no problem with those.
Okay. Okay, so let's adjourn. I have to.
No. Okay, so my understanding that we have a question, about what we're charged with and what we agreed on in this meeting and what to expect the next. So what we're charged with is reviewing any MOU of interest to us. So staff has given us a selection of things she thought would be of interest to us. And we've gone through 32 of the 110 pages that we were given. So, we'll expect next time to get into the agreement for ACCOPSA. We're also looking at something from BART, an agreement with BART.
Oh, yeah, that's way at the back.
And then something has been rescinded or removed, something from ICE, and it was removed by the city council. So we'll be focusing on those other two things, ACCOPSA and BART.
Any questions to Chief?
Yeah, the questions of the chief already been discussed. I don't have time to go through them, but we're
Yeah.
reading them right now.
They're, But there will be something in writing that has our questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Public comment?
Just thank you very much, and I'm interested in
Public comment,
hearing
yeah,
about.
that's fine.
Thank you.
So, next meeting date, when do we meet again?
Oh, let's,
Tomorrow, no.
no,
Ah,
I'll be in bed.
I
Trying to
work,
get
I
over
work
it.
from 9 until midnight tomorrow,
Oh, wow.
9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, how about
Those are my days, 4 days a week.
we could meet before the PRC meeting next Wednesday?
Okay.
I could also meet in the morning.
At 6 o'clock on Wednesday,
She's not available.
on next Wednesday?
No,
Alright, does that slot never work for you?
never. I have my granddaughter,
Okay.
and she doesn't get picked up until like 7:15, so,
So, is this morning time best for you?
yeah, it is.
Wednesday
But what
mornings?
about you, George? I know you, I don't feel like getting up, honestly, I'm retired. But
But what time works best for you?
I'm very flexible.
I mean, so I'd rather we do it between 1 and 3 or something, but you don't have, what is your window? What is the last time you can meet on the
the
day?
last time I need to be out of here because I have to pick her up after
Uh-huh.
school, I have to be out of here no later than 3. If I
That's
do
right.
something like that.
So
then
we can do,
that's just putting a lot of, so
But we-
what time would we start, 1 to 3?
yeah, we can do 1 to 3 if that's,
Okay.
Next week,
Yeah.
1 to 3, the 13th.
and that works for me perfect because that means I can, sleep in after working 14 hours.
1 to 3, okay, that'll work.
With a hard stop at 3, so that
You have
no
to.
child
Yeah.
standing.
No child left
I'm not
behind.
gonna be- You guys will
So
be.
no
with-
child
I'm
left
not gonna be
behind.
my
So we have no
granddaughter
child left behind.
anywhere.
Well, let's not use that phrase, that's a Bush phrase, let's not use
Right.
that. No one wants a Bush phrase.
I amended that phrase too,
Ugh.
because it's all about testing and torturing children. No
Testing and torturing
Are we,
children.
are
Oh
we
my
adjourned?
I call
God.
it no child
Well,
left